I love it. I love it. I love it. Look at this. This is the greatest thing I've ever seen.
Hey, I'm not surprised.
Hey, what's good, the homies? Hope you're doing well, having a good day, having a good week. This one's going to be RDR taking on Brendan Allen in Vancouver, Canada. And the Canadian cards, they're always good. And I really want to do well on this card because my bets on the Patreon recently, they have not been good, man. So let's start a betting win streak, all starting with Vancouver, Canada. And I'm going to have at least 5 bets on this card, maybe more. There's a couple Canadians that I really like for a bet. And yeah, man, let's start a betting win streak, all starting with Vancouver, Canada. Let's go. First matchup, we've got Melissa Croden taking on Tainara Panther Lisboa, taking place in the women's bantamweight division. So let's start the breakdown with the UFC tested fighter Tainara Panther Lisboa, who's a 2-time Muay Thai champion before crossing over to MMA. She's currently 2 wins, 1 loss inside the UFC octagon. Her UFC debut came over 2 years ago against the veteran fighter Jessica Rose Clark, and she done very well in that UFC debut. The boxing difference in that debut was so clear. Tainara Lisboa just had the much sharper punches, the more significant punches, and she actually got a late submission to win that fight, which I didn't expect, because anytime a Muay Thai fighter's making a UFC debut, the last thing you're thinking is a submission win. Lisboa's next fight was against Brazilian fighter Ravena Oliveira, and this was another solid performance by Lisboa. She used her ground game to win this fight, got easy takedowns against Oliveira, and once she got the takedown, her opponent was like a fish on the ground. Ravena Oliveira just unable to shrimp, unable to re-guard, just a complete fish on the ground. So another very easy win for Tainara Lisboa. But here's where things go bad for Lisboa. She gets a nasty knee injury, has to have surgery on her knee, has to learn how to walk again. And anytime a fighter has to learn how to walk again, that's basically career done. And if the career ain't done right there and then, you're not just picking up where you left off. Coming back from knee surgery is a massive challenge. And she looked a bit slower in that return fight against Luciano Santos. Her takedown defense was non-existent. Luciano got her to the ground multiple times, where previously, Tainara was the one bringing her opponents to the ground, and eventually she got submitted. It was a masterclass performance by Luciano Santos. Now, it's worth noting that Melissa Croden is a step down in competition from Luciano Santos. And Melissa Croden's making her UFC debut this weekend. She's Canadian, fighting in Canada, so she's going to have the fans on her side, and maybe the judges on her side if the fight's close enough. And Melissa Croden's only 6-2 as a professional mixed martial artist, so fairly inexperienced making her UFC debut. She has a similar striking style to Tainara Lisboa. She's a Muay Thai kickboxer, so expect mainly a stand-up fight where both fighters are probably finding success at moments in the fight. I think Lisboa has the better Thai boxing, but I think Melissa Croden has the better Thai kicking. And as for the clinch game, I've seen Croden clinch up and land massive Thai knees to the body, but she's done that against pretty low-level competition. Doing that against Lisboa would mean way more. And that's the challenge this weekend for Melissa Croden, proving you can deliver winning performances against better competition, because Tainara Lisboa is without doubt the best competition she's ever been up against. So can she put together all of her weapons this time round? Personally, guys, I think it's going to be a very, very close fight. It's going to be very close. I could definitely see a scenario where it's 1-1 going into that final round. And by that point, as we know, it's usually down to who's got more left in the tank and who wants it more, who wants to win more. And I slightly favour the Canadian, who doesn't have more experience. She's not more proven than Tainara Lisboa, but I think she can clinch up with Lisboa, work her over against the fence, land those Thai knees to the body of Tainara, and I slightly favour a 29-28 on the side of the Canadian, Melissa Croden. But there's no locks here, guys. There's no locks. Tainara has the experience. She's got better boxing, sharper boxing. She's fought under the bright lights in the UFC already. All of these advantages could weigh very heavy against an inexperienced Melissa Croden. I slightly favour a 29-28, a split decision on the side of the Canadian. It's going to be a close fight, but I do slightly favour the debutant, Melissa Croden. Azamat Bekoev taking on Yousri babyface Assassin Belgaroui, taking place in the middleweight division. Let's start the breakdown with the Russian fighter, Azamat Bekoev, who's currently 2-0 inside the UFC, Both performances are super violent performances, and that's something we've already learned about the Russian. He ain't playing around inside the octagon. When Bekoev steps foot into that octagon, he's looking to brutally dust up the opponent. You look at the ground and pound he displayed against Zach Reese in his debut. That was nasty stuff. That was devastating stuff, man. Those punches on the ground, they aren't to score with the judges. Those punches are to send the opponent's consciousness to another galaxy. And that's what Zach Reese experienced in that debut. Then you look at his performance against Ryan Loader, this time a TKO on the feet. An interesting fight actually, because Ryan Loader tried to get Azamat to the ground. He initiates the clinch pretty quickly, and from there, once you clinch up with someone, you learn pretty quickly how strong the opponent is. As soon as you clinch up, you naturally know, okay, I felt clinches way stronger than this. Or you're thinking, okay, this dude feels like stone. And that's kind of what I saw in that fight with Ryan Loader. I'm seeing Ryan Loader clinch up, and instantly, you're seeing the Russian resistance. You're seeing that strength. You're seeing that balance of Bekoev. It's good stuff. So he easily stops the takedown, and once he does, he basically destroys Ryan Loader on the feet. Ryan Loader's throwing punches, and it's almost like Azamat Bekoev doesn't even notice he's getting hit. Then Azamat lands his right hand, and Ryan Loader just crumbles to the canvas. So the power of Azamat Bekoev, the power in his punches, is good to go. It results in a TKO stoppage against Ryan Loader. Now the opponent is Yousri Belgaroui, a Dutch kickboxer making his UFC debut, and this guy has a win over Alex Pereira in kickboxing. So it goes without saying, he's very talented in the kickboxing realm. However, this fight isn't kickboxing, it's MMA. The takedowns, the wrestling, the grappling, the ground and pound, all of these things are heavily on the side of Azamat Bekoev. So what happens if the Dutch kickboxer isn't allowed to showcase his Dutch kickboxing? What happens if he's made to wrestle? What happens if he's made to go to the ground? What happens if he's brutally beat up on the ground? What happens if he's got to defend chokes? More than likely, guys, we're going to find out this weekend the answer to all of those questions, because that should certainly be the game plan for Azamat Bekoev. Why kickbox with Yousri Belgaroui, an elite Dutch kickboxer? Why do that? Just take him to the ground and smash him on the ground. And that's typically what happens against high-level kickboxers in MMA. You see it so often on the regional scene, and you see it often at the highest level of mixed martial arts. The Taekwondo strikers, the Muay Thai strikers, the Dutch strikers, they're all taken to the ground. And you ask them a simple question. Is your grappling zero? Is your wrestling zero? Because if you're grappling zero and you're wrestling zero, you're going to get dusted. And that's kind of what I think is going to happen in this fight. I'm not sure how quickly Azamat Bekoev brings him to the ground. It could be within 60 seconds. It could be the last 60 seconds of round one. It could be the first 60 seconds of round two. I'm not sure how quickly he's going to bring him to the ground. But what I do think is when he brings him to the ground, which could be at any moment, I think he's going to dust him on the ground with nasty, devastating ground and pound. So the prediction has to be the Russian Azamat Bekoev. Next matchup, we've got Stephanie Luciano taking on Ravena Oliveira, taking place in the women's strawweight division. Stephanie Luciano, 6 wins, 2 losses, 1 draw. Ravena Oliveira, 7 wins, 2 losses, 1 draw. So let's start the breakdown with Ravena Oliveira, who's currently 0 wins, 1 loss inside the UFC octagon after a very disappointing UFC debut against Tainara Lisboa. She just couldn't stop the takedown, and her ground game was that of a white belt. Just a very poor display by Ravena Oliveira in her debut. And you may be wondering, why haven't we seen Oliveira since that fight? Because that debut, it took place in October 2023. We're now in October 2025. Ravena Oliveira had a nasty knee injury. She needed surgery on her knee. And anytime you go to Snap City with the knee, and you've got to learn how to walk again, like I said earlier, career done. Now, Stephanie Luciano, on the flip side, 1 win, 1 loss inside the UFC octagon. Her most recent performance came against a scrappy veteran, Sam Hughes. And that's a tough fight for any inexperienced fighter. Dealing with the pressure of Sam Hughes, dealing with the toughness, her wrestling, her ground game, her ability to overcome adversity. That's a very, very tough fight for any inexperienced fighter. And in all fairness, Stephanie Luciano done well. And for that breakdown, I predicted Stephanie Luciano would win a split against Sam Hughes. but she lost the split against Sam Hughes. So yeah, very close fight. There was multiple times in that fight where Sam Hughes would just walk forward into the strikes of Luciano, the kicks, the punches. There was moments in that fight for Luciano, but she got mauled on the ground by Sam Hughes. Now, Luciano doesn't have the best takedown defense. Not that Ravena Oliveira should present a very high-level wrestling game, especially after knee surgery, and the fact that Ravena Oliveira was the one being taken down by Lisboa. And even if Ravena Oliveira does bring her to the ground, there's a moment where Luciano stands up against Sam Hughes. And if you can get back to the feet against Sam Hughes, you can get back to the feet against Ravena Oliveira. So the matchup, in my opinion, is going to stay striking for the most part. And if it does, I think Stephanie Luciano, she's a good striker. She's good on the feet, man. There's good kicks. She mixes up her attacks really well. There's big punches, big left hooks. And Ravena Oliveira with the time off, with the knee injury, and she just didn't look good in that UFC debut. And let me read to you guys some of the opponents Ravena Oliveira fought against before getting to the UFC. These are some of the records. 0-1, 0-0, 0-1, 1-1, 0-0, 0-0, 0-0. 3 times in a row, she fought against someone that's never had a fight. So guys, in my opinion, the prediction has to be Stephanie Luciano. And maybe with a KO TKO, she might stop Ravena Oliveira. She might. Next matchup, we've got Kyle Killshot Prepolec taking on Drew Dober, taking place in the lightweight division. Kyle Prepolec is now 0-3 inside the UFC. He got destroyed by Benoit Saint-Denis in his short notice return to the UFC. He did survive for a round on the ground, but in the second round, he got dusted. He got submitted via head and arm choke. Now let's focus the breakdown on Drew Dober, who's a veteran of the sport, a veteran in the UFC, a fan favourite is granite chin Drew Dober. But that chin isn't really made of granite these days. It's a chin that's taken a lot of damage. And we know that when a fighter's chin gets tested over and over the way Drew Dober's chin's been tested, we know that chin doesn't get stronger. The chin gets weaker. There's no such thing as chin conditioning. It's not like your jaw gets cracked and it gets stronger. It gets weaker. And that's ultimately why Drew Dober got brutally TKO'd in the first round by Manuel Torres. And you hate to see it because Drew Dober's a fan favourite. You don't want to see him getting dusted like that near the end of his career. The same as Vicente Luque from last week. And by the way, Henry Hoof, man, you should be throwing in the towel there. Vicente Luque was done in that fight. And Henry Hoof's like, you know, tell me you're okay. Tell me you're okay. Tell me you're fine. You can see, man, Vicente Luque didn't want to take any more damage. And Joel Alvarez, he showed him mercy. You know what I'm saying? Joel Alvarez protected Vicente Luque more than his corner. But yeah, that's kind of the comparison I want to give. You don't want to see these veterans, these fan favourites, taking that type of damage right near the end of their career. And the UFC don't care. Let's have it right. The UFC don't care. They're willing to make a name off the veterans. But that's the reason why Manuel Torres brutally TKO'd Drew Dober. His chin's not the same anymore. And then you look at the damage he took against Gene Silva. The amount of damage he took in that fight was insane. And then you look at Matt Frevola steamrolling Drew Dober in round 1. I just think all the damage Drew Dober's taken over the years, it's really catching up. But here's the good thing. The good thing is he's fighting against Kyle Prepolec, who's not very good. He's not very good, man. If you lose to Kyle Prepolec, that would be absolutely, say it with me now, diabolical. And I know the Canadian subscribers listening to my channel right now, you don't want to hear me saying that about a Canadian, but there's much better Canadians on this card. Kyle Prepolec is not that good. He's not that guy. So Drew Dober has to get a KO TKO. He has to do it. So the prediction has to be Drew Dober to find that Canadian chin of Kyle Prepolec and to get a nice KO TKO. And I think he'll do it round 1 or maybe early round 2. But the prediction has to be the fan favourite, Drew Dober. Next matchup, we've got Danny, left hand to God, Barlow, taking on Jourdain, Shakur, Santos, taking place in the middleweight division. So Danny Barlow stepping up to middleweight after getting stopped by Sam Patterson in his last fight. And I'd like to know why Danny Barlow's stepping up. I want to know why. Does he think he's a big welterweight and his real weight class is 185? Because if that's the case, I'd have to disagree. Or is it because he thinks the reason why he got knocked out by Sam Patterson is because he's cutting too much weight to make 170? Now that seems more plausible. And if that's the reason why he's stepping up, it could be an overreaction by Danny Barlow, because sometimes in the fight game, you're going to get clipped, you're going to get dropped, you're going to get stopped. Sometimes you're the hammer, sometimes you're the nail. That's the fight game right there. But yeah, I am interested to see what Danny Barlow looks like at middleweight. The jump from 170 to 185, that's a big jump. The size of a welterweight is very different to the size of a middleweight, and the power difference is massive. Those middleweights pack way more power than the welterweights. But yeah, let's speak about Danny Barlow. He debuted against Josh Quinlan, which was a very nice performance. It was Southpaw versus Southpaw in his debut, and Josh Quinlan just couldn't deal with the speed of Danny Barlow, the speed of the left hand, the technical timing of Danny Barlow. It was basically a mismatch on the feet past round one. But in round one, Josh Quinlan actually landed a few big punches. But as we progressed past round one, that's where it became more of a mismatch. That's where we really saw the speed, the timing, the accuracy, the technical ability, the boxing ability of Danny Barlow. And he gets a stoppage in the final round. A beautiful stoppage. Then Danny Barlow fought against a short notice Nikolai Veretennikov, which could have been a much more dominant performance by Danny Barlow. But then you see against Sam Patterson, he gets stopped in round one. And that's mainly because Danny Barlow has the hands down style. The hands are down. And as we know, with the hands down, we see it with Joe Sang Yu from last week. Not last week, the week before. When the hands are down, it's dangerous. You've got to be moving your feet well. You've got to be rolling with the punches, slipping the punches, looking for the pull counter, but being perfect with the pull counter. It's a dangerous style to have with the hands down, but there is positives. You know, it makes it very difficult for the opponent to read those punches coming your way. But against Sam Patterson, that style backfires. He gets clipped in round one, and now he's stepping up to middleweight. Now the opponent, Jourdain Santos, who's definitely a true middleweight, currently 0-1 inside the UFC after a very disappointing debut. And I say disappointing because Ozzy Diaz isn't some high-level boxer. He's not high-level at anything. And Santos struggled against Ozzy Diaz. He got outboxed by Ozzy Diaz. In round one, the Santos calf kick, it looked extremely powerful. And the snapping jab of Santos, it also looked good in round one. But the weaknesses of Santos really started to show more and more as the fight progressed. Now, Jourdain Santos does keep good pressure on the opponent, but his head movement, it's not that good. He doesn't parry punches. He doesn't slip punches. He really needs to work on his defensive ability. And I think offensively, he also telegraphs a lot of his punches. Don't get me wrong. There's power in the hands of the Brazilian Santos. It's just he doesn't set the punches up well. He doesn't stay defensively sound. Basically, he doesn't play the striking chess match at the highest level. And at the highest level, it's not about who hits harder. It's about who's smarter, who understands the striking game on a higher level. And when you compare Danny Barlow to Jourdain Santos, I think it's pretty clear that Danny Barlow is the more intelligent boxer, the more educated boxer. And this matchup's going to be southpaw versus traditional. So both fighters are going to land inside calf kicks on that lead leg. And I think Santos, he's going to start fast in round one, but then I see him fade in the same way he did against Ozzy Diaz. Whereas Danny Barlow probably takes a more measured approach, more composed approach. I think round one could be a pretty good round for Santos, just throwing more punches, throwing more kicks. I think he probably does more in round one than Danny Barlow. But make no mistake, Danny Barlow's looking for a nasty KO TKO in this fight. He's got the sharper boxing, the sharper counters, the faster and more educated boxing. Santos doesn't slip punches well. That left hand of Danny Barlow, I'm telling you, man, that left hand is a fight ender. And if that left hand lands clean, which I think it will do, don't be shocked if you see Jourdain Santos sleeping before he even hits the ground. And I think that left hand probably lands at some point in the second round. Like I say, round one, he's going to be more composed, more patient, allowing for Santos to do his best work. Then in the second round, I think the left hand is going to become more active and it's going to find the chin clean of Jourdain Santos. Now, it is a concern that Danny Barlow got knocked out and he's stepping up to fight someone with even more power. That's a concern. But he is the sharper fighter. He is the sharper boxer. And I think at some point, he's going to land clean against Jourdain Santos and he's going to find that KO TKO. So the prediction has to be Danny, left hand to God, Barlow. Next matchup, we've got Bruno, Bulldog Silva taking on Peace of Mind, Yun Sung Park, taking place in the flyweight division. And let's start the breakdown with the Brazilian Bruno Silva, who's currently 4 wins, 4 losses, 1 no contest inside the octagon. And Bruno's a pretty well-rounded fighter. He can do both the striking and the grappling. He's now 35 years old though, which is pretty old for a flyweight. And typically, you age much faster in the lighter weight classes. Flyweight's all about speed, reactions, cardio. And when you get into your mid-30s, the speed, the reactions, the cardio, it all starts to fade. And based on Bruno's last 2 performances, I'd have to say he is past his prime. But then again, he did fight Manel Kopp and Josh Van, who are 2 extremely talented flyweights. In the Manel Kopp fight, you can see there's a massive difference in the speed and the confidence. The skill gap, it was very evident. And eventually, Manel Kopp gets a late KO TKO. Then you see something very similar in the Josh Van fight. There's an output difference, a speed difference, a confidence difference. All of these advantages were heavily on the side of Josh Van. And again, Bruno Silva gets stopped in the final round. And if you go check the stats from those fights, or should I say, if you combine the striking stats from both of those fights, you'll realize that Bruno Silva has been hit 260 times in his last 2 fights. Now you divide 260 by 6 because he's gone 6 rounds in his last 2 fights. That means he's getting hit 43 times per round. And if you're getting hit that much per round, then, you know, the reactions are gone. The defense is gone. You're past your prime in that weight class. On the flip side, we've got Yun Sung Park, who's currently 3 wins, 1 loss inside the octagon, coming off a very bad main event loss against a very talented Japanese fighter, Tatsuro Taira. And there's certainly no shame in losing a fight to Tatsuro, but tapping to a face crank is kind of embarrassing. And it has to be said that Yun Sung Park is not on the same level as Manel Kopp. He's not on the same level as Josh Van. So Bruno Silva is getting a step down in competition. And I bet against Bruno Silva in his last 2 fights because Manel Kopp and Josh Van, 2 of the best flyweights in the UFC. I can't really say the same for Yun Sung Park, but Yun Sung Park is good. He is a prospect. You look at the way he completely destroyed Shannon Ross. And I know Shannon Ross is super low level, but you get to see the power of Yun Sung Park in that performance. You look at the way he completely destroyed Carlos Hernandez, who's also not that good, but again, it's another performance where you get to see this skill set of Yun Sung Park. And this time it's a ground stoppage. So not only does Sun Yun Park destroy the opponents on the feet, he can bring you to the ground and destroy the opponent on the ground. I know it didn't seem like he's got good grappling in his main event against Tatsuro Taira, but Tatsuro Taira is one of the best. There's levels to the game. And Yun Sung Park is just improving fight by fight. His work so far in the UFC has been very, very good. And I think getting a win over Bruno Silva would be the biggest win in his career to date. It's a massive fight for Yun Sung Park, and he's maybe catching Bruno Silva at the right time. You know, he's been hit 260 times in his last 2 fights. The reactions are gone on the side of Bruno Silva. The defense is gone. And when you put him up against Yun Sung Park, who's coming off a loss, so he's going to be hungry to win this fight. And, you know, he's looked good so far in the UFC. So I'm going to take Yun Sung Park to win this fight. Like I said, it's a step down from Manel Kopp. It's a step down from Josh Van, but he's still a good fighter, is Yun Sung Park. And I think he can win this fight. I think he's going to win this fight. That's the pick. Next matchup, we've got Charles Jourdain taking on Dangerous Davy Grant, taking place in the bantamweight division. Let's start the breakdown with the Canadian Charles Jourdain, who's now 7 wins, 7 losses, 1 draw inside the UFC. Not exactly the best record, 7 wins, 7 losses, but definitely not the worst record. Charles is primarily a kickboxer. His last 2 wins have actually been guillotine chokes, so it's fair to say he's a well-rounded mixed martial artist. And let's recap the last 6 fights of Charles Jourdain. 6 fights ago, Charles fought against Nathaniel Wood over in France, and he was a slight favourite in that fight. I bet on Nathaniel Wood as a slight underdog. The performance of Charles Jourdain just seemed levels below Nathaniel Wood. Anything Charles did in that fight, Nathaniel just did it better. The boxing, the kicking, the takedowns. the wrestling, the clinch striking. He just outclassed Charles Jourdain anywhere the fight went. And then he fought against Kron Gracie. And anytime you fight against Kron, the game plan is very simple. The ground is lava. You stay off the ground. And if you look back at Charles Jourdain's performance, it was a very nice performance. He didn't really throw many kicks in that fight because you throw a kick, Kron can catch that kick and get a takedown from that. So the performance of Charles Jourdain, it was very nice. Then he got a guillotine choke against Ricardo Ramos, which isn't exactly a super impressive win because we just saw Ricardo Ramos get submitted in Brazil by Khan Offley and even got submitted by Julian Erosa. Then he lost against Sean Woodson, which in my opinion, the performance, it was a poor performance. He looked lost on the feet. But then again, Sean Woodson has the broomstick build, a very overpowered build. And it's not the first time a fighter struggled against Sean Woodson. After losing to Sean Woodson, he got brutally stopped by Gene Silva. It was a nasty uppercut that landed flush in the second round. But as we know, Gene Silva is an absolute monster. So there's no shame in losing that matchup. So after losing and winning a lot of the time at featherweight, he's moved down to bantamweight, gets his first win over Victor Henry, which was a very nice win because he submitted Victor Henry, who's a black belt. So multiple times in the career of Charles Jourdain, he's got submissions against black belts. But yeah, overall, I'd say Charles Jourdain, he's a good bantamweight. Or he's looking good at bantamweight so far in his debut. But now he's got another fight at bantamweight. And this time it's against Davy Grant, who's a very tough fight. Davy Grant is 8 wins, 6 losses in the UFC. Now 39 years old. And last week we saw with Carolina, who's also 39, she looked awful. Let's be real, she looked terrible. But Davy Grant is truly one of the best 39-year-olds you'll ever see. He's a phenomenal 39-year-old bantamweight. His performances are that of someone who's in their late 20s, not their late 30s. And I've actually seen Davy Grant fight live. I saw him fight in Hamburg, Germany back in 2018, mid-2018. And guess what happened in that fight? Manny Bermudez dropped and submitted Davy Grant within 60 seconds. And if you told me back then, in mid-2018, that Davy Grant would still be winning and still performing so good in 2025 and looking good whilst he does it, I would have said you were smoking crack. But just look at the recent performances of Dangerous Davy Grant. He completely outclassed him on black shit everywhere the fight went. He's a very good ground fighter. He understands the ground game on a very high level. There's nothing you're going to teach Dangerous Davy Grant at this point. He's a veteran's veteran. And anytime you hear someone say a veteran, you typically think, oh, they're past their prime. They're not good anymore. But that's not the case with Dangerous Davy Grant. I think he looks better than ever. So guys, how does the fight play out between Charles Jourdain and Davy Grant? Well, if Charles Jourdain's going to win, he can't bring his B game. He can't bring his C game. You have to bring your A game because anything less is not going to cut it against such a classy veteran who's in the form of his life. You can't show up against Davy Grant and bring your B game. You can't do that. You have to bring your A game. You can absolutely expect Dangerous Davy Grant to bring his A game. He's going to be throwing a lot of output every single round. He's going to be throwing heavy power into every strike. But I just wonder, at 39 years old, that's the type of age where you can massively decline overnight. And that's not happened yet to Dangerous Davy Grant. We've not seen that happen just yet. But what if he shows up this weekend and he does look a tad slower? And Charles Jourdain being in Canada, he might be motivated to match that output of Dangerous Davy Grant. And he also might look at the recent performances of the opponents of Dangerous Davy Grant and say, you know what, these guys didn't really perform too well. Damon Blackshear didn't do enough. Ramon Tavares didn't do enough. I'm going to go in there in Canada in front of my own people and put on a masterclass against a veteran. Like I say, if Charles Jourdain's going to win, he has to bring his A game. Anything less is not going to cut it against Dangerous Davy Grant. My prediction, I'm going to take Charles Jourdain. I just think he's going to match the output of Dangerous Davy Grant. Kyle the Monster Nelson taking on Matt the Steamroller Frevola, taking place in the lightweight division. Guys, I'm pretty convinced a fight between Matt Frevola and Kyle Nelson won't see the judges' scorecards. I'm pretty convinced of that. Too much chance someone goes night-night. Too much chance someone gets dusted. Let's start the breakdown with Matt Steamroller Frevola, who's currently 5 wins, 5 losses, 1 draw inside the UFC. 7 of Frevola's UFC fights have had stoppages, going the distance just 4 out of 11 times. And I think the style of Matt Frevola is a very fan-friendly style. He's always looking to entertain the fans in attendance and the fans watching at home. He's 0 to 100, which makes him a very fan-friendly fighter. But from a gambling perspective, betting on Matt Frevola is like playing roulette. There's no science to roulette. It's hit and hope. And that's kind of what it's like betting on Matt Frevola. His style is very risky. He goes 0 to 100. He's just looking for a fight-ending moment. But often, he leaves himself open for counter-punches that sees him getting stopped. Matt Frevola has been brutally dusted in his last 2 fights. Faraz Siam took years off his life with a fight-ending knee to the chin, and Benoit Saint Denis with a brutal head kick stoppage. These knockouts are like career-ending knockouts. You don't easily recover from those type of knockouts. So the chin of Matt Frevola is a real concern. But will Matt Frevola change his game plan? Because the smart game plan here, in my opinion, would be to wrestle the opponent. Matt Frevola actually has very good wrestling, but he doesn't rely on that wrestling skill set to win fights. He just goes into the octagon looking for a 50k bonus. He just goes in there for a rock'em sock'em robots type of war. He's all about just delivering entertainment for the fans. On the flip side, we've got Kyle the Monster Nelson, currently 4 wins, 5 losses, 1 draw inside the UFC. And make no mistake, guys, Kyle Nelson has fight-ending power. He's got that stopping power in the 4-ounce glove. He's defied the odds on multiple occasions. He was a plus 200 against Bill Algeo. He won that fight by TKO. He was a plus 200 against Fernando Padilla. He didn't stop the fight, but he won the fight. And he was also over plus 200 against Blake Builder. Again, winning that fight, defying the odds. And Kyle Nelson absolutely has the ability to stop Matt Frevola in a rock'em sock'em robots type of war. That's the type of fight the fans in attendance want to see. That's the type of fight the fans at home want to see. That's the type of fight the underbetters and fight doesn't go the distant betters want to see. But what if Matt Frevola wrestles? What if he wrestles? You know what, guys? I'm going to predict Matt Steamroller Frevola to steam wrestle his way to victory. Maybe it's wishful thinking that he's going to do that, but I just think if he wrestles the opponent, if he takes Kyle Nelson to the ground over and over and looks for that finish on the ground, he can get this fight done. He can be the winner at minus 110. And I think he might do that. I'm going to predict Matt Frevola to wrestle his way to victory, or to wrestle his way to a ground and pound or a submission. Take down Kyle Nelson. If you stand and trade in the pocket, then it's 50-50. It's like roulette. I'm going to take Matt Frevola with the steam wrestle. Next matchup, we've got Cody the Renegade Gibson taking on the Mongolian murderer Arichi Lang, taking place in the bantamweight division. And this is quite a decent matchup. Let's start the breakdown with the American Cody Gibson, who's now 3 wins, 6 losses inside the UFC, which is a shockingly bad record, by the way. He's much better than a 6-3 record, in my opinion. He's a very fun fighter to watch. Excellent cardio, high output, good wrestling, good grappling. So he fought against Brad Katona in his return fight, and that was an absolute barn burner of a fight. Just a phenomenal fight. If anyone hasn't seen Brad Katona versus Cody Gibson, and you've got UFC Fight Pass, go check it out. Cody Gibson took a lot of damage in that fight. His defense was basically zero. He was a walking punch bag, but he also showcased a high output, and he threw so many punches in that fight. Then against Miles Johns, he was outclassed. The defense, it looked pretty bad. He looked stiff on the feet against Miles Johns. And at that point, you're kind of thinking, he's not good enough for the UFC. But then he puts on a masterclass against old man Brian Kelleher. A super dominant performance. He took down Brian Kelleher and destroyed him on the ground. Beautiful wrestling, beautiful grappling. He gets a submission win. Then Cody Gibson fought against Chad Anheliger, another fight that he looked really good in. The wrestling was on point all night for Cody Gibson, and I love the way Cody Gibson was switching stances to set up the takedown, showing multiple looks on the feet to Chad Anheliger, and the takedowns were so dominant. They were set up beautifully, and it was a performance where Cody Gibson just looked so good. He dominated the whole fight. Then against Damon Blackshear, he starts really well in round 1. a quality round in round 1. He goes from plus 300 to minus 120 after round 1. And the grappling skill of Damon basically is the reason why Cody didn't win that fight. He gets submitted. But it was a strong start for Cody Gibson in round 1. Now the opponent, Arichi Leng, who's currently 3 wins, 4 losses, 1 no contest inside the UFC. Arichi Leng is primarily a boxer. He doesn't like to wrestle. He doesn't like to grapple. He's not really too good at that stuff. He prefers to stand and strike. And when his opponents allow for him to stand and strike, he's very good at doing that. He's got power in the hands. But there's times in his performances, there's times in his career where he does get wrestled, like against Cody Djorden. Also, his debut against Jeff Molina, he took a serious amount of damage in that fight. Jeff Molina just boxed his nose off all fight. Then against Ayman Zahabi, he actually got knocked out early in round 1. So there is some weaknesses in the game of Arichi Leng. He's got a poor ground game, poor defensive wrestling, and also poor boxing defense. But the great equalizer is his stopping power. The calf kicks are also very heavy, but the punches weigh even heavier on the side of Arichi. So if he stays on the feet against Cody Gibson, he might knock him out. He might upset Cody Gibson in this fight because Cody Gibson's defense, like we've said, is very, very bad and he's so stiff on the feet. So if you put that up against someone that has power, you put 2 and 2 together, Arichi Leng could drop Cody Gibson or potentially stop him with a KO TKO. However, Cody Gibson has amazing cardio, amazing pressure, and typically he's very durable. He can eat those punches on the feet. And once he gets Arichi Leng to the ground, that's where he's going to drown him on the mat. He's going to smother him on the mat, suffocate Arichi Leng with the ground game. And the thing with Cody Gibson is he doesn't just lay in guard. He doesn't just lay there. He actively looks to advance position to more dominant positions, threatening to finish the fight with a submission. And when you've got a fighter that's so active on the ground, that's a good thing because the fans are entertained and you're scoring points with the judges and you're also exhausting the opponent. You're forcing the opponent to basically work off their back because if they don't work off their back, they're going to be stopped. So you're actually exhausting the opponent by making the opponent work. And I'd make the point that the best ground fighters are the ones where when the opponent gets back to the feet, the opponent just looks done. It's like the soul's been taken out of them. And you kind of feel that way when you watch Cody Gibson fight. When you watch his groundwork, you feel there's a real sense of trying to drown the opponent, trying to smother the opponent. He's so active on the ground. Whether he takes your back and he's searching for a neck attack or he's looking for a head and arm choke, he's such a mauler on the ground. And I just think as the fight progresses past round 1, midway into round 2, that cardio of Cody Gibson, the pressure, the output, the takedowns, the ground game, the grappling, the ground and pound, it's all going to add up. And I actually think he might submit Arichi Leng late in this fight. So my prediction has to be Cody Gibson to get it done. Manon, the Beast Fiorot, taking on Jasmine Jasudavicius, taking place in the women's flyweight division. And quite a high-level matchup here in the flyweight division. It means a lot for both fighters because Jasmine is so close to the title shot. She's won 5 fights in a row, and with a win over Manon Fiorot, without a doubt, she deserves a crack at the title. So this is by far the biggest fight in Jasmine's career, without a doubt. Whereas Manon Fiorot, she's coming off a loss, a very close fought loss against the champion Valentina Shevchenko. And that was an extremely close fight. At one point in that fight, Manon was minus 250 on the live betting line. She done phenomenal in that fight. But her game plan, it kind of shocked me because her game plan was to clinch up. It was a clinch-heavy game plan, a takedown-heavy game plan, which kind of makes sense because Valentina has amazing Muay Thai, but Manon also has amazing striking herself. So to see her focus more on the clinch was kind of surprising. But that's what Valentina does. She makes even the best strikers turn into wrestlers, turn into clinch fighters. Now, does Manon try and clinch up against Jasmine? Obviously not. Obviously not. Manon will stay far away from the clinch. She's going to stay far away from the wrestling, far away from the fence, far away from the ground as she possibly can against Jasmine Jasudavicius. And it's a pretty easy matchup to break down. If the fight's on the feet, it's a mismatch. Jasmine is nowhere near the striker Manon Fiorot is. If the matchup's on the feet, it's going to be very one-sided. it's going to be very much in the favour of Manon Fiorot. But if the matchup goes to the ground or the matchup goes to the fence, where you get that Greco-Roman wrestling position against the fence, it's going to be dominated by Jasmine, because Jasmine is so big, she's so strong, and her grappling, her wrestling, it just gets better and better. Her ground game is terrifying. She's like the Canadian Khabib Nurmagomedov. She's a mauler on the ground. She's terrifying on the ground. So I guess the question is, does Jasmine get the takedown against Manon? She definitely could. She definitely could get Manon to the ground. But it's going to be much difficult than what it was against Jessica Andrade, who's pretty small. It's going to be far tougher than what it was against Mayra Bueno Silva, who's very flat-footed, very one-dimensional. It's going to be much tougher than what it was against Fatima Klein, who's very small and very inexperienced. It's going to be quite difficult to get Manon to the ground. Now, that doesn't mean Jasmine can't bring her to the ground. She definitely could. And if she does, she's potentially going to stop the fight or win that round. But if the matchup stays on the feet, then we know Manon is going to win that round. So it really comes down to where the fight takes place. And in all fairness, it's anyone's guess. It's anyone's guess. I'm going to slightly lean towards Manon Fiorot though. I just think her physicality is a part of her game. She's not just a technical striking animal. She's also a physical animal. She's very strong. Even Erin Blanchfield had 5 rounds to get Manon to the ground. And she struggled so badly to bring it to the ground. And also, Manon dominated the clinch against Valentina Shevchenko. She even brought Valentina to the ground at certain times in that fight. And how many times have you seen someone clinch up against Valentina and dominate in the clinch? Not often. So guys, the takedown this time round for Jasmine, it will be more difficult, but she can do it. She can do it. It's going to be a very close fight, a very good fight. But I lean more towards Manon Fiorot. Next matchup, we've got Marlon Chito Vera taking on Ayman Zahabi, taking place in the bantamweight division. We've got a great bantamweight matchup here. Another fight that means a lot for the weight class. You've got Ayman Zahabi on such a spectacular win streak late in his career. Typically, as you get older, you start to regress in skill. But Ayman Zahabi is similar to Davy Grant. He just gets better. He's like a fine wine, is Ayman Zahabi. He's currently 7 wins, 2 losses inside the UFC. And those 2 losses came very early in his career. He now finds himself on a 6-fight win streak, starting back in 2021. The last time Ayman Zahabi lost, it was 2019. So you have to respect the win streak. You have to put serious respect on the name of Ayman Zahabi. Such a well-spoken fighter, a student of the sport, the brother of Firas Zahabi. Ayman Zahabi is a problem. I'm telling you, man, he's a problem. So let's take a look at his past performances. Let's recap his win streak. The win streak starts against Draco Rodriguez. The bookie puts him as a plus 160. He goes into the fight and gets a brutal stoppage in round 1. Then he fights against Ricky Tercios, which was quite a boring fight, but the bookie puts him plus 180. And Ricky Tercios is sparring the air. He's punching the air the whole fight. And Zahabi stays nice and composed and just kind of wins based on actually landing punches. Whereas Ricky Tercios, he's punching the air. Then he fights against Arichi Leng. Again, the bookie puts him plus 100 and it's a round 1 KO TKO. So at this point, he's won 3 fights in a row as the underdog. Now he's a plus 575 against Javid Basharat. And again, he defies the odds. He wins against Javid Basharat. And I think this fight really showed just how good of a boxer Ayman Zahabi is. He's so accurate with his punches. He's got excellent timing. He stays defensively sound. And he just catches the opponent at the perfect time throughout the whole fight. So now he's won 4 fights in a row as the underdog. He goes into a fight with Pedro Munoz, finally the favourite, a minus 140. And it's a masterclass performance of timing, composure, sound defense, accurate punches. Just another solid performance by the Canadian Ayman Zahabi. Now he's fighting Jose Aldo, back to being the underdog, this time a plus 160. And to be completely honest, it did look like Jose Aldo was about to win this fight. And some people say Jose Aldo did win. Jose starts so well in round 1, but then he starts to fade in round 2. He badly rocks Zahabi in the final round. And this was the moment where you're thinking, the win streak of Zahabi is over. But Jose Aldo was so tired that he shoots a lazy takedown. The fight goes to the ground and Zahabi's landing a barrage of elbows. So many elbows on the ground, nasty ground and pound, and he sways the judges to side with him in the final round. So I'd have to say Aiemann Zahabi is without doubt one of the most underrated UFC fighters of all time. He's always underestimated by the bookie and he always proves the bookie wrong. I've picked against him basically every single time on this win streak. I picked Jose Aldo, I was wrong. I picked Bedran Munoz, I was wrong. I picked Javid, Arichi Leng, Ricky, Draco, I was wrong on all of them. On the flip side, we've got the veteran fighter, Marlon Chito Vera, who's currently 15 wins, 9 losses inside the UFC, which isn't exactly a good UFC record. But guys, let me read to you the last 11 opponents Marlon Vera's fought against. He's fought against Figueiredo, O'Malley, Pedro Munoz, Corey Sanhagen, Dominic Cruz, Rob Font, Frankie Edgar, Davey Grant, Jose Aldo, Sean O'Malley again, Song Yadong. That's a crazy resume. That's the who's who of 135. So don't hold the 15-9 record too much against Marlon Vera. As for the skill set of Marlon Vera, he's a slow starter. He's always been a slow starter. I even saw him fight live back in 2017 at the O2 Arena against Brad Pickett. And back then, I didn't really know who Marlon Vera was. I was obviously cheering on Brad Pickett, and Brad Pickett was winning the whole fight. He was winning the whole fight, and I'm thinking, this is such an easy retirement fight for Brad Pickett. And right as I'm thinking that, it's in round 3, and Marlon Vera lands a flush head kick, and the ref instantly stops the fight. The whole arena went silent, and the whole time was thinking, you know, this is an easy matchup for Brad Pickett, and then bang, out of nowhere, Marlon Vera gets the win. And that's kind of been the theme of Marlon Vera's career. Early on, you're thinking, he's not going to win. He's not doing anything in round 1. He's not doing anything early in round 2. But he gets more dangerous as the fight progresses. He's one of the most violent fighters on the roster. He may not have the highest fight IQ. He may not be blessed with natural talent, but he's got that dog. Marlon Vera's got that dog in him. He kind of reminds me a little bit of Nate and Nick Diaz. He doesn't care who the opponent is. He doesn't care about scoring in a fight. His mindset is just cause damage. Try to make the opponent bleed. Try to make the opponent realise they need that dog in them to win the fight. That's who Marlon Vera is. He's got a win over Sean O'Malley. And Sean O'Malley does dispute losing that fight. But that's a legitimate loss. He was checking the leg kicks of Sean O'Malley. And when you check the low kick, when you turn that shin in, that's a nasty way to turn defense into offense. That's a nasty thing, man. And that's something Marlon Vera can do. He checks those low kicks. Never forget the front kick he smacked Frankie Edgar with. Devastating. Never forget the way he dusted Dominic Cruz in his return fight, in his retirement fight. Never forget the way he destroyed Rob Font. Take a look at Rob Font's face at the end of that fight. It looks like he's been hit by a truck. You know, that's what it means to be in a fight with Marlon Vera. He's so violent, he's so scrappy, and he knows how to cause damage against the opponent. I would describe Marlon Vera as a nasty fighter. Like I said, he's not the smartest, he's not the fastest, he's not championship quality. Make no mistake though, when you get the name Marlon Vera put across your desk, you understand blood will need to be donated to the canvas, and Aiemann Zahabi knows that. So for me guys, because I pick against Zahabi all the time, and I'm always wrong, I guess I'll continue the ritual of picking against Aiemann Zahabi. I'm going to pick one of my favourite fighters of all time. I'm picking the nasty scrappy dog, Marlon Chito Vera, as the underdog. I think Aiemann Zahabi does have better boxing. I think Aiemann Zahabi is smarter. I think Aiemann Zahabi has better defense. Aiemann Zahabi has more confidence, more momentum. He's got the home advantage, being in Canada and being Canadian. There's multiple advantages on the side of Aiemann Zahabi. But I think Marlon Vera is one of those fighters where if he can win one of those first 2 rounds and it's 1-1 going into the final round, you know by that point, Marlon Vera is at his absolute best in that final round. So don't be shocked if it's 1-1 going into that final round and Marlon Vera lands a devastating front kick, a nasty elbow, a nasty uppercut, or finds a submission very late against the in-form Aiemann Zahabi. It's always a possibility. That final round for Marlon Vera, it's always good. So I'm going to go with the experience. And I might be wrong because Aiemann Zahabi, man, he just continues to win. But I'm taking Marlon Vera. Like I say, if it's 1-1 going into that final round, Marlon Vera is a destroyer in that final round. He's a dog. He's in full force by round 3. The co-main event, we've got proper Mike Malott taking on Kevin, the Trailblazer Holland, taking place in the welterweight division. Let's start the breakdown with the more experienced fighter, Kevin Holland, the homie, who's now 15 wins, 11 losses, 1 no contest inside the octagon. This will be his 28th UFC fight, which is kind of crazy considering he only joined the UFC back in 2018. To have 28 fights in 7 years, that's insane. So we can't make any excuses for Kevin Holland. We can't say, you know, he hasn't got the experience. That's something we can't say. Kevin Holland has more experience at the highest level than most people will ever have. But Kevin Holland is proof that experience doesn't necessarily translate to skill. You would think with all the experience Kevin Holland has, he would have gotten really, really good by now. But that's not the case. And I'm not trying to be harsh on Kevin Holland, but his last performance against Daniel Rodriguez as a -600, it was pathetic. And Daniel Rodriguez does have good boxing, but to see Kevin Holland lose that fight in the way he did, it's just not good. It's horrible to see. And Kevin Holland's fought against some really good competition over the years. He's fought against past prime Luque, past prime Gunnar Nelson, RDR, Roman Dolidze, MVP, JDM, Michael Chiesa, Ponzinibbio, Wonderboy, Hamzat, Vittori, Derek Brunson, Jacare, Brendan Allen, Thiago Santos. He's fought against amazing competition. So just like Marlon Vera, you can't really hold the 15-11 record against Kevin Holland. His takedown defense, though, has always been very bad. You could say he's worked on his defensive wrestling a little bit over the years and sometimes keeps the fight upright. But overall, I'd say that his takedown defense is still pretty bad. It's always going to be a weakness in the skill set of Kevin Holland. And I also think his striking against Daniel Rodriguez, both offensively and defensively, it looked kind of bad. It looked kind of bad, man. There's times in the fight where Daniel Rodriguez was landing clean punches that rocked Kevin Holland. There was a moment late in the fight where Kevin Holland was able to rock and nearly stop D-Rod, but at that point he was already concussed a couple times and he just couldn't finish the fight. Even though Rodriguez was so tired and so hurt, he still couldn't finish the fight. And the performance, you know, it kind of put me off Kevin Holland. Now guys, look at Mike Malott in his last performance. He destroyed Charles Radke. It was a masterclass, 10 out of 10 performance by the Canadian, and he destroyed him. He finished him in the second round. Just a perfect performance. And I had money on the underdog, Charles Radke, and the whole time I was watching that fight, I was thinking, man, Mike Malott is proper. He's proper, man. He ain't a scrub. This dude's got skill. The fight against Trevin Giles, that was an easy fight because past prime Trevin Giles, he's a walk in the park. Then you look at his loss against Neil Magny, which there's no shame in losing that fight, but Neil Magny needs to stop doing that, man. You've got to stop doing that. Maybe we give Neil Magny Carlos Prates or Ian Gary or Shavkat again. Give Neil Magny one of those fights again, because seeing Neil Magny pull off those Hail Mary wins, someone's got to stop that. So guys, how does the co-main event unfold this weekend between Mike Malott and Kevin Holland? What happens? It's fair to say it's a massive step up for Mike Malott. He's getting a massive step up. And some people may say it's too soon in the career of Mike Malott to be fighting someone as experienced as Kevin Holland. But I think Kevin Holland is one of those fighters that you put him up against a rising prospect, because Kevin Holland doesn't take fighting seriously. He's always moving between middleweight and welterweight. He doesn't spend a whole lot of time in between fights working on his skill set. I just think Kevin Holland, he wants a paycheck more than anything. Whereas some fighters, they want the legacy more than anything. And Mike Malott loves fighting in Canada. He's got sharp, crispy boxing that's always improving fight by fight. He's extremely dangerous on the ground. He's got amazing jiu-jitsu. A black belt on the ground is Mike Malott. And I think it would be very wise for Mike to wrestle Kevin Holland to the ground, considering Kevin Holland, he's not a good wrestler. If the fight stays on the feet though, I wouldn't even be shocked if Mike Malott rocked Kevin Holland. I wouldn't be shocked if Mike Malott boxed the nose off Kevin Holland the whole time. I also wouldn't be shocked though if Kevin Holland lands a straight punch, the same type of punch he smacked Joaquin Buckley with. But where was those long punches against Daniel Rodriguez? Where was that long 1-2 of Kevin Holland against D-Rod? Kevin's boxing in that fight looked outrageously bad. His head movement, it was non-existent. And he just looked lost the whole time on the feet. So guys, for me personally, I'm done picking Kevin Holland. I'm done, man. He's got so much experience. But at times it looks like he's never had a fight in his life. At times. So for me, I've got to go with the Canadian. I'm going with proper Mike Malott in the co-main event in Canada in the biggest fight of his life against a very experienced Kevin Holland. I'm taking the Canadian, proper Mike Malott. The main event, we've got Reinier, RDR the Ridder taking on Brendan All-In Allen, taking place in the middleweight division in Vancouver, Canada. Let's start the breakdown with the more experienced fighter in the UFC and the fighter that's taken this matchup on relatively short notice, Brendan All-In Allen. Now 13 wins, 4 losses inside the UFC, which is a very good record, by the way. 13-4, that's good. Brendan is primarily a grappler, a slick jiu-jitsu player on the ground, but these days, he's able to stand and strike his way to victory. You look at his performance recently against Marvin Vettori, a phenomenal performance by Brendan Allen. He beat the brakes off the scrappy Italian Marvin Vettori. Prior to that performance though, he fell short to Anthony Hernandez and Nassourdine Imavov. But there's no shame in losing to either of those guys, 2 of the best middleweights in the UFC. Anthony Hernandez is like the Mexican Marab. He's got infinite cardio, so there's no shame in losing that fight. And Nassourdine Imavov in France is always going to be a very tough fight. So there's no shame in losing to either of those guys. I think Brendan Allen's had a really good UFC career. It hasn't been perfect, but anytime you can win 13 fights out of 17, that shows you're doing something right. He's always been super dangerous on the ground, a phenomenal grappler, and he's greatly improved his boxing over the years. He's very calm in the stand-up these days. He doesn't make many mistakes on the feet. He's one of the best welterweights on the roster, without a doubt. On the flip side, we've got Reinier the Ridder, a fan favourite already. He's currently undefeated in the UFC. 4 fights, 4 wins, 3 stoppages by RDR. His debut wasn't the most impressive against GM3. He kind of struggled against GM3, which in my opinion, that's a red flag. But he did find the way to lock up a submission late in the fight. Both fighters were exhausted past round 2, but RDR finds a submission. Then against Kevin Holland, he followed the perfect game plan. He tested the takedown defense of Kevin Holland, and Kevin Holland completely failed at stopping the takedown. From there, it's a complete mismatch on the ground. The jiu-jitsu skill of RDR, he easily finds a submission. And that fight kind of tells us anytime RDR has a grappling advantage, he's going to follow the right game plan to get his hand raised. Then he fights against Bo Nickel, and he causes a massive upset. It's a massive upset because Bo Nickel is a phenomenal wrestler, one of the best wrestlers in the UFC, but RDR doesn't care. RDR doesn't care, man. He says, if you take me to the ground, I'll just play jiu-jitsu. And that's definitely something I overlooked breaking down that fight. Anytime you have a pure wrestler against an elite grappler, typically the grappler causes all kinds of trouble for the wrestler, and that's exactly what you saw on the ground. But on the feet, RDR is non-stop pressure, working Bo Nickel over in the clinch, landing massive stepping knees. Eventually, Bo Nickel says, all right, I've had enough. All this pressure, all these knees, all this damage, I've had enough. So now you're looking at RDR 3-0 in the UFC, 3 finishes, and the UFC says, okay, here, we're going to put you in a main event, and we're going to give you former champion, super experienced, super well-rounded, Bobby Knuckles, Robert Whittaker. And again, RDR finds a way to get his hand raised. A super close main event, by the way. It wasn't domination by RDR. It was extremely close. But the judges did get the fight right. The right man got his hand raised in that fight. Guys, in my opinion, that's RDR's best attribute. It's not his grappling. It's not his size for middleweight. It's not those Dutch knees to the body. It's not his experience. It's my opinion that RDR's best attribute is he finds a way. He just simply finds a way. I would compare him to DDP because I believe DDP also, his best attribute is just finding a way. Some fighters just find a way to win. It's almost unexplainable. But after the fight you say, oh, RDR won again, DDP won again. They just find a way to win. And Brendan Allen on the flip side, I think he's got better boxing. I think he's got better footwork. I think he's got more experience than RDR in the UFC. There's things to like about Brendan Allen in the main event. But the things I don't like about Brendan are his chin has always been a little bit questionable. I don't want to say he's got a bad chin because I've seen him eat punches to the chin and be completely fine. But there's times where you clip him perfectly on the chin and his legs will turn to dust. There's times where his chin hasn't really showed to hold up in a fight. And I also think Brendan Allen slows down a lot in his performances. For example, he started very well against Nasruddin in France. Then he completely fades. He started very well in his rematch against Fluffy, completely fades. He dominated early in the rematch against Chris Curtis in the main event. Then in the middle, towards the end, he's fading. So I don't think he's got bad cardio and I don't think he's got a bad chin. But there's times where his chin doesn't hold up and there's times where his cardio doesn't hold up. But then you look at his pace against Marvin Vettori. That wasn't a slow-paced fight. That was a fast-paced fight. And Brendan looked great the whole time. But RDR is much better competition than old man, past prime Marvin Vettori. And Reinier de Ridder is a massive middleweight. He's super dangerous with the grappling. He's got nasty damaging clinch work. He's going to land those knees to the body. You can't take too many of those knees. They're going to slow you down. I just think RDR finds a way to win. He could be down 2-0 after 10 minutes and the next 15 minutes he just dominates. He could be down 3-1 after 20 minutes and then he just finds a submission in round 5. Or it could be 2-2 after 20 minutes and he edges that final round the same way he did against Robert Whittaker. Or you can drop RDR somewhere in round 1, somewhere in round 2 and he recovers and still finds a way to win, like he did against Whittaker. And although I think Brendan Allen is super talented, one of the best welterweights in the UFC, I just think it's going to take so much to win against RDR. RDR is a very awkward middleweight. He's a huge middleweight. And I just think he finds a way to win. So my prediction has to be Reinier de Ridder to simply find a way. I'm not sure how. I'm not sure how he's going to win, but I think he'll find a way. And by the way, if RDR loses round 1 and goes to like plus 100 or loses the first 2 rounds and goes to plus 200, it's not a bad in play because he simply finds a way. As always, my homies, let me know who you're taking in the main event, the co-main event, your straight bets, your doubles, your parlays, all that good stuff. Drop in the comment section below. And as always, keep your eyes to the sky, never glued to your shoes. Peace.